He was a magnificent player, freak, genius, a classic batsman, an extraordinary player, and as Sir Donald Bradman said, the greatest left-hand batsman of all time.
Robert Graham Pollock was born in 1944 in Durban, South Africa, into a sporting family. His mother played provincial tennis. His father had kept wicket for Orange Free State. It was in Port Elizabeth as a youngster that he was instilled with a passion for sport.
We had to rush to the airport. We left at 20 to 6 and got there 10 to 6. So wherever you want to go in Port Elizabeth is not a problem. But certainly St George's Park. My dad was a convener of the selection, so I used to go to all the games and had my own scorebook and scored, and you know, that's when you're interested, that's what you do.
With an older brother, Peter, who was to play alongside Graham in their international careers, life at the Pollock household was always competitive.
Peter always tells a story that when we played as youngsters that I did the batting, and when I was out I didn't want to go out, so he just kept on bowling, otherwise I wouldn't play, type of scenario, so he ended up doing all the bowling.
By the age of 13, Graham was playing for his school side in a men's league. It was to prove an invaluable experience. Already he understood the value of hard work.
People say that if you've got talent, natural talent, that you don't practice. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. I practiced as hard as anybody. I was absolutely fanatical. I accept, yeah, I had a good talent. But I can think of the times I used to go to nets. I mean, playing a club game, I used to have a net in the morning of a club game, which if you look around, not too many people do that. But I wanted to do well, and I just believed that if I practiced hard and spent that sort of time, it would pay dividends.
It certainly did, as a 16-year-old Pollock became the youngest player to score 100 in the Currie Cup. It was only his 5th match playing for Eastern Transvaal. By the time he was 19, he was wearing the Springbok colours for South Africa's 1963 tour of Australia. Broad-shouldered and over 6 feet tall, it proved to be another stepping stone, not only for himself, but also for a test side on the verge of greatness.
That was the start for South African cricket. There was a lot of young guys all on their first tours, and everyone said, look, you know, you're wasting your time going to Australia. But we ended up sharing the series with him. And we had guys like Eddie Barlow, Dennis Lindsay, brother Peter, Colin Bland. We were all on our first trips. And in South Africa, you never had full professional cricket, so you were working and then playing. But to have a period where you're totally committed to cricket, you learn more about the game, you learn more about what you want to do as a batsman, and you practice more. And I think when the guys came back after that 5 months, it really started an era in South African cricket.
Pollock made a name for himself in the Sydney Test, scoring his maiden Test century. The teenager was grabbing the headlines back home. In Adelaide, he and Eddie Barlow shared a record stand in double-quick time. The free-scoring, fluid batting was a Pollock trait.
My first coach, in fact, was a guy called George Cox. He played county cricket for Sussex. And I think the good thing was that he's a positive guy, and he just believed that batting was all about taking it to the bowlers, and if it's down the leg side, it's a free ball. So I always played that type of cricket. And as you say, I mean, Adelaide, we had an incredible, we put on 341 in probably 4 hours. I mean, Eddie Barlow got 200. It was just one of those circumstances where the bowling wasn't good for a period. I think we might have put in 180 runs in the last session of a Saturday.
His Test career continued to flourish, and in England in 1965 he played what was arguably his greatest Test innings. In cloudy, humid conditions, South Africa were reeling at 43 for 4, but Pollock came in and turned on the style, scoring 125 out of a total of 160 in under 2.5 hours.
If you look at the whole Test in perspective, that it was significant, and that we won the Test, and it was a wicket that the seamers had bowled well, and sides didn't get big scores. So I think in that context, it was probably the best innings I've played.
The 4-0 series drubbing of Australia in 1970 proved ultimately to be the end of an era, rather than a platform for dominance of a great Test team. Australia arrived as #1 in Test cricket, but were soon blown away by an all-round Test side of immense talent. and in the second test in Durban, Pollock created more history. His 274 was South Africa's highest individual test score.
We played Australia, which is, in fact, they came to South Africa in 70 having won a series in India and basically saying, listen, if you beat India in India, you've got to be the best. Our side, we really, if you look at Eddie Barlows and Barry Richards, Mike Proctor, Dennis Lindsay, these guys, I mean, in world cricket, they were so highly rated.
By this time, though, events off the field were taking their toll. The South African government's policy of apartheid, which segregated the black majority from the whites and discriminated against the blacks, was creating an international furore. There were frequent demonstrations, and just months after the victories against Australia, South Africa were thrown out of world cricket.
You know, something had to happen, and I think South Africa paid the price for the apartheid policies. There was no doubt about it. But someone had to pay the price, and it was sporting guys. And by not playing internationally, that brought about change. Well, that's got to be good because, you know, we're back now. And I think that 21-year period was there for a reason that has set South Africa back. I think it was needed, and while I was part of it, I think it had to happen.
At the age of just 26 and after only 23 tests at a formidable average of 60.97, Graeme Pollock's test career that had lasted just 7 summers was over. His record stood on its own. Only Don Bradman has achieved a higher test average. And while it would be easy for Pollock to talk about lost years, he's taken a more philosophical view.
I think we had hoped that maybe within a 3-5-year period things would get sorted out. I don't think anybody anticipated it would be 21 years. It really was difficult because we had such a great side. But then I think, well, you know, I played 23 tests. What a guy. Barry Richards played 4 and Mike Proctor 7, and guys never played. You've got a guy like Clive Rice, a great all-round cricketer in world cricket. Great success with Nottingham. Never played an official test. So there was that period. I mean, and then I think of Garth LaRue. All right, they all played World Series cricket for a couple of years, but I mean, that's not the same as playing for your country.
With South Africa banned from international cricket, it wasn't until Kerry Packer's arrival in the late 1970s that Pollock's name was back on the world scene. Pollock was one of 35 players signed up by the Australian on a 3-year contract. The World Series matches between Australia, the West Indies and a World 11 were played under floodlights and revolutionised cricket throughout the world, attracting huge crowds. But Pollock's role was to be purely one from the sidelines.
I did enjoy them because I got paid and I didn't play. I mean, that's why I enjoyed it. I didn't play because of obviously political reasons. I wasn't playing county cricket. And there was a proviso which they were quite happy to have the South Africans playing as long as they were playing county cricket. But Kerry Packer was unbelievable. He said, you know, we need the West Indies and this is what they've demanded. And he fought for us in every way that we got full pay and all sorts of things, which is what happened. But it was a political thing. He needed the West Indies. He didn't need a couple of South Africans who weren't playing county cricket.
But Pollock continued to play in South Africa. In the 80s, he faced rebel touring sides such as Sri Lanka and domestically became the highest scorer in Currie Cup cricket.
If we had played as much cricket, I wouldn't have played first-class cricket for 27 years. I mean, I could play for that long because we had all the breaks and, you know, for 6 months nothing happened.
He retired in 1986, and now with South Africa reinstated to the international stage, Pollock is in huge demand to provide his services to the media.
It was just so good to see all the ex-cricketers. I mean, you pick, you know, whenever you're going or go to England or a test series, and you look at the spread. I mean, we've got Ian Botham and Dave Gow in the Sky team and a lot of South African guys, and then I'm with the talk radio, and it's Jeff Boycott and Chris Cowdery and Mark Nicholas, Bob Woolmer, and really it's so interesting because they sing so much cricket, just the general chatter and what you pick up and hear about world cricket.
And of course, the Pollock name lives on. His nephew Sean is regarded as one of the world's best current all-rounders and is an automatic choice in the South African side. But his uncle still sees some room for improvement.
He's been fantastic. I think the only disappointment is he should be getting more runs. I mean, he's got incredible talent, but at the same time, you know, with guys talking about it, why isn't he getting as many runs as he should? I think when you're rated at this stage #1 bowler in the world and you're spending so much time practicing and bowling, well, it's got to affect something. And, you know, maybe at a later stage when the bowling is not such a really key factor, I think you might see him getting more and more runs.
Despite the dawning of a new era for South African cricket and the emergence of a new Pollock on the scene, Graeme is still revered as his country's finest. In January, he was named as South Africa's Cricketer of the Century. The game is now open to all in a united country, but the modest left-hander, who's now 55 years old, is still taken aback that he's treated as a celebrity in his homeland.
I am surprised because the times when I was in the UK, I'm now introduced as Sean Pollock's uncle, so I am surprised. You know, it's a long time ago. I played till 1987, that's 12 years ago, and these are young people. But I suppose sometimes the old man might have remembered, or he might have made a comment or whatever it is, so you still keep being sort of put in the limelight.
Graeme Pollock's time on the international stage may have been short-lived, but he achieved more in 7 years than most in a lifetime.